Yesterday we're on page 31, starting the Parsha of Noach. And what we saw is that here Noach is described in terms that appear to be praising him. And there was one phrase where we're facing a contradiction. Righteous, perfect, righteous, perfect in his generations. And we said there were two ways to interpret it. One to say, righteous, perfect, not really, just comparatively to the people in his generations, more righteous and more perfect, not really righteous and perfect. That was one way of interpreting it, which reduces his praise. Versus saying, no, righteous and perfect, yes, it means exactly what it says. It's absolute terms. It says in his generations. It means in spite of his generations. Even though he lived in terrible times, he wasn't affected by them and was able to manage to become righteous and perfect. And then we asked, why would anyone opt for an interpretation which pulls him down when clearly in the context he's being praised? Why would you opt for a negative interpretation when a positive interpretation is available to you? And we pointed out that if you look further in the environment, you'll see that there are elements that do indicate weaknesses in Noach. He only went into the ark when the waters were threatening him, not because God told him to go in. And it says he walked with God, and we saw that walking with God was an equivocal type of praise. And we saw that he was given the instruction to build the ark, according to Rashi, only because in that way people would be provoked to ask him why he's doing it, and he'll tell them that the flood is coming if they don't change their ways. And the implication being that were it not for that provocation, he would not have volunteered to try to influence them, to try to change them. So these are weaknesses in his character. And therefore, there's room for a negative interpretation of righteous perfect in his generations as meaning only in comparison to his generations. As we will see, perhaps today, when he leaves the ark, he becomes drunk. That's quite striking. Maybe it's a result of the flood itself and the consequence of the flood. We'll talk about that. But still, the end of drunk does indicate that there's some weaknesses there, and the text will go on to speak about other weaknesses as well. Now, yesterday at the end, we saw a verse, and I cut it in half because there was a separate point that I wanted to share with you. So let's look now back on page 33. Verse 12. I'm sorry, 18. I'm seeing correct. Verse 18. Top of the page. I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark. You, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. Does that list bother you, shock you, frighten you, disorient you, make you angry? No one today would dream of writing a list like that. No one would dream of it. What's dreadfully wrong with this list? You don't notice it? Yeah. Men and women separate. You and your sons, comma, break, take a breath, pause. Your wife and your sons' wives. No one would write that. You'd write you and your wife and your sons and your sons' wives. Isn't that peculiar? So, you suggest that the men and women are supposed to be kept separate. Maybe that's a good explanation. We'll see. But first of all, when you look at it, your hair ought to stand on end. If you're reading it like the 11-year-old that I keep describing with a dictionary and just looking at it hoping it makes sense, that would not make sense at all. Now, take a look at the bottom of the page, verse 7. Noach, with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives with him, went into the ark. There you are. Same order. Women to the back of the bus. You know? Men first, women second. Oh, that's the ancient Jewish prejudice against women, and so forth and so on. Maybe. But then, maybe not. How about taking a look at page 39? Verse 15, middle of the page. God spoke to Noah, saying, "Go forth from the ark, you and your wife, your sons and your sons' wives with you." So here, the order is the normal order that we would expect. So what happened? And before we draw any premature conclusions, just look down at 18. So Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife and his sons' wives. So that's back to the order we had on page 35. Well, what is going on? No simple idea that women to the back of the bus is going to fit what we have on 39. Okay, 3 out of 4. Maybe we should make it like democracy. 3 out of 4, women to the back of the bus. 1, where they're equal. So obviously, no, that's not right. Whoever wrote this, I'm not taking any prejudices now, whoever wrote this obviously had something in mind. It wasn't that the sage was sort of dozing at the fire and trying to remember what it was. Was it wives, sons, wives? I don't know. I guess it was like this. Probably not, right? A book that's been the cornerstone of human literature for 3,300 years probably wasn't written in a dozing fashion. The book has something to teach us, something to tell us. So now, the standard explanation is what he said. At the beginning, on page 35, there it says, "Go in, you and your sons, your wife and your sons' wives, separate." And they go in separate. Then when God says to come out, he puts them together. The implication is, what's going to happen while they're in the ark? Well, the whole breathing world is going to go down the drain. Yeah, I meant that. They're all going to die. This is a time of terrible destruction. It's a time of the enactment of divine judgment and divine punishment. That's no time to be functioning with normal building of families. But on page 39, God is telling them to go out of the ark. And now let's look on 39 again and look at the context a little bit more carefully. Again, verse 15. God spoke to Noah, saying, "Go forth from the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Every living being that is with you of all flesh, birds, animals, moving things that move on the earth, order them out with you, and let them teem on the earth and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So it's clear what the project is. The project is now to repopulate the earth. Okay, if that's the project, what do you make of verse 18? What do you make of verse 18? On page 39.
Maybe just a technical issue. They now have to go out. It's not so easy. I don't know how to climb down.
Okay, I think I appreciate what you're saying, but I would like to try to work on a kind of stage-by-stage basis. You took 2 steps now. First of all, you identified a problem, and then you offered a solution. First, tell me what the problem is. The problem is, what does the verse say? They're not doing it. Hello? You were told to go out. Noah and his wife, sons and sons' wives, and they didn't do it. Well, that's noteworthy, isn't it? I mean, God makes it clear what they should be doing, and he makes clear the purpose. It's not as if they're in the dark. Godly, he told us to go in separate, and now he's saying to come out together. I wonder what he means. No, he tells them all this. that it should repopulate the earth, and they don't do it. Yeah?
From where did we derive the events he didn't go? Because I don't
Look
see
at verse 18.
So Noah went forth and his sons. And his sons, his wife and his sons' wives with him.
So what's the order? It's Noah and his sons, all the men, and then his wife and his sons' wives, all the women.
Yeah,
That's separate.
but he did go anyway.
But he didn't go out the way God told him to go out. In verse 16, he says, go out, you and your wife,
He didn't go out.
and your sons' wives. He didn't go out that way. He went out, he and his sons, and his wife and his sons' wives. That isn't what he was told to do. That's what he was told to do when he went into the ark, and what he did when he went into the ark. Now he's being given a different instruction, and he's sort of stuck on the original platform. No, we're saying separate. That's quite remarkable. So you're already offering a suggestion. Why did it happen? Maybe the technical. Maybe that's the explanation. But at least we have to notice that this is so. Okay? Now I claim that the next 2 pages of text, this is what the commentators say, the next 2 pages of text are all engineered to address this problem. This problem of getting together. Let's go through now the next couple of pages of text and read them in the light of this problem. These texts are very rich. You could read them in 100 different ways with 100 different applications, and they're all correct. But I want to read them just in the light of this problem. God told them to come out, man and wife, and they came out separate. Okay? So now, I'm skipping certain things because they're not going to contribute to this project. Look at verse 20 at the bottom of page 39. Noah built an altar to Hashem and took of every clean animal, every clean bird, offered burnt offerings on the altar. Hashem smelled the pleasing aroma. Hashem said in his heart, all this requires commentary and explanation. I'm not doing that now. This is what Hashem said in his heart. I will not continue to curse again the ground because of man, since the imagery of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I continue to smite every living being as I have done. Continuously, all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, shall not cease. What do you make of that?
He wants first the humanity.
I'm sorry, say again?
God said in his heart that he won't destroy the humanity again.
Right. He's not going to have a general destruction again. But you repeated correctly in his heart. That means what?
He did not say to Noah directly?
He didn't say it at all. He said it in his heart. This is a private, mental image that God, so to speak, that God has. But he didn't communicate it to Noah. So look what the book is telling us. Noah is not getting together with his wife, the sons with his sons' wives. They're not getting together. And now, fact is, there isn't going to be any more general destruction, but Noah doesn't know that. So we have to keep that on record. The book is sort of setting us up for something. Okay, now, let's go on. 41, chapter 9. God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply. What do you get from that?
He's already said that.
No, he didn't say that. He didn't say, be fruitful and multiply. What did he say?
Said to them.
He said to go out, you and your wife, your sons' wives. He hinted it to them. I told you when you went into the ark, go in men and women separate. I'm telling you when you go out men and women together. Got it? Get the hint? All the animals have to reprocreate and refill the earth. Got the hint? No. No, they don't got the hint, or they got it and they're rebelling against it. They're not doing it. So now God says, okay, you're not following up on the hint that I gave you. I'm going to put it to you direct, word for word. And as you'll see, in this paragraph, he says it twice. The paragraph starts, God blessed Noach and his son, said to be fruitful and multiply, and fill the land. Then there are all sorts of instructions. Skip down to verse 7 at the end of the paragraph. And you, be fruitful and multiply, teem on the earth and multiply upon it. What does the repetition imply?
Right now?
Okay, at least you could say right now. That you do have in the Torah. A repetition can emphasize that it's happening right now. Joseph makes that point with the dreams that Pharaoh had. He had two dreams. They're all about the same subject. And he says, you want to know why God repeated it? Because it's going to happen right away. That's one thing. Also, look at the difference between the first verse and the last verse and see if you can figure out some difference in the
in the first verse, Hashem is saying to Noah and his sons. In the seventh verse, he's saying just Noah.
Let me just check that. That's a nice point, if it's true. No, it's plural. In Hebrew, it's plural. You don't have that. That's why I was checking. In the Hebrew, it's plural, so it is said to both of them. But what's the verb in the first verse?
Team instead of fill
No.
the land.
No, before that. What is God doing in the first verse?
Be fruitful.
What is God doing?
Commandment.
Look again. Doesn't say that. No, doesn't say that. What? No, it doesn't say that. What does it say on the text? The answer's not on my forehead. The answer's right there on the black and white text. Yeah, God blessed them. That's what it says. He blessed them. A blessing is a sense that you're going to be accompanied by divine power and divine connection, and the result of it should be, right? When you give someone a blessing, you're not obviously giving them a command. Sometimes a blessing could just mean a wish for your welfare. You're starting a new job, I hope it goes well. I'm not telling you to go out there every day on time. I'm not telling you to bribe your boss. I'm not telling you anything. I'm just wishing you well. So in the beginning of the paragraph, it says it's a blessing. The end of the paragraph is not a blessing anymore. It's an instruction. So this is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is following up on what happened on the previous page. The previous page, God said, go out, you and your wife and your son's wives, and they don't do it. Now God blesses them that they should be fruitful and multiply, and commands them that they should be fruitful and multiply. So now we have to ask, did they get it this time? Did they do it this time? So the next three paragraphs will show you that the answer is no, but I have to show it to you. Before I actually show that to you, I want to point out something very crucial here. We're on page 41. Again, verse 1 says, God blessed Noach and his sons, and he said to them. The finishing of the speech is verse 7. That's where the closed quotation marks are, and that's quite correct. This is one long divine speech. The next paragraph begins, and God said to Noach and his sons. But God was talking in the previous paragraph. Why would it repeat and say over again, God said to Noach and his sons? What does that imply, that it repeats and says it over again?
It has something to do with, like, he also said it with him. So some sons maybe left after the first paragraph, because first he said to them, and his sons, and he said to them, and the second he said, and his sons with him. So there are sons that without him.
Okay, that's very good. That certainly could be one explanation for why this is done, because now this speech has a somewhat different character than the previous speech. But also, and this is going to happen in the next two paragraphs again, and happens many times in the Torah, you have a speaking, the whole speech, and then it says, and a said, the whole speech. It says, and a said, another speech. It means there are three separate speeches. It's not just one continuous event. It means there's a gap between the speeches. And if the text is telling you there's a gap between the speeches, you have to think, I wonder what happened in the gap. And I wonder whether what happened in the gap motivated the next speech. So let's see. First of all, God says to him, he blesses him to be fruitful and multiply, gives him all sorts of instructions, and then tells him, I want you to be fruitful and multiply. What's the next speech about? God said to Noah, at the bottom of page 41, verse 8, God says to Noah and his sons with him, say, and as for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your offspring after you and with every living being that is with you, the birds, the animals, every beast of the land with you, all that departed the ark, to every beast of the earth, and I will confirm my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Aha. What happened here? Before, when God resolved not to destroy the earth, what was it?
He said it in his heart.
Said it in his heart. It was a private soliloquy. Now he's sharing this to them. He's telling them that that's what's going to be done. Could this be relevant at all to their hesitation about reproducing and filling the earth with people? Could this perhaps now be answering something that's standing in their way? Could it be relevant to strengthening their resolve? What might be going on in their minds?
They might be worried that they're going to have kids and their kids are going to repeat the same mistakes as the generation they were in, and why would they submit their children to that?
That's right. Why do you think it'll be any better this time? The first human beings were direct creations of God. Their descendants ended up in a gigantic disaster, a gigantic flood. You're telling us to repopulate the earth? Why should we do that? What hope do we have? We're going to be finished in the same way. Or at least there's a very good chance we're going to finish in the same way. And that being the case, we're not willing to do it. So God says, I'm going to answer your problem. I'm going to promise you that it will never happen again. So, what happened between the first speech and the second speech is this. The first speech was, I bless you and command you to be fruitful and multiply. And they say, we can't do it. We're not doing it. I'm not commenting now whether they had free will or didn't have free will, whether they were facing something that was too overwhelming. But they're not doing it. So God says, I know why you're not doing it. You're not doing it because you're afraid that your descendants will meet the same fate. I promise you it's not going to happen. Okay? That's the second divine speech. Again, I'm skipping over lots of details. Verse 12, and God said, oh, again, introducing God as speaker. So there's a separate speech. Let's see what it says, and let's see if we can motivate it by responding to the same problem. This is the sign of the covenant that I give between me and you and every living being that is with you to the generations forever. I've set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And it shall happen when I place a cloud over the earth, and the bow will be seen in the cloud, I'll remember my covenant between man and you, and between me and you, and every living being in flesh and water shall never become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud. I'll look upon it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living being among all flesh that is on the earth. End of speech. Verse 17 is a new speech. What does this add? How is this related to the previous?
He confirmed it, and he gave him the sign that Noah also saw himself as a confirmation. Oh, there is a rainbow, God remembers.
Okay. So it sounds like God makes a promise, and somehow for Noah the promise isn't enough. Somehow doesn't move him. He's still stuck, because this really just reconfirms the promise and strengthens the impression of the promise on Noah. So it's addressing the same problem. For the very same reason that God communicated the promise to him, God is now communicating to him a sign of the promise. And by the way, I want to point out two details here. We have it in English also, a rainbow and a bow for a bow and arrow. And in Hebrew it's the same thing. A keshet is a rainbow and it's also a bow for a bow and arrow. Now, this is a historical fact. Nations that used bow and arrow as a weapon, if they were meeting and they wanted to show a sign of peace, they would hold the bow and reverse it so that the string is on the side of the other person, which means if you reverse it, you can't shoot it, right? That's a sign of peace. By the way, shaking hands means no weapons in my hand. Some people greet one another this way, no weapons in my hand. Prostrating on the ground, if I prostrate myself on the ground to you, I'm totally defenseless. I'm on the ground, my face is down, I can't even see you coming. That shows my total trust in you. These greetings have a communication of this kind of peaceful status. Okay? Now, the rainbow is a curve, right? Imagine that it's a bow for a bow and arrow. And it's a Kodesh Baruch Hu's bow. Which way is it facing? The curve is facing us, right? That's the reversed bow. If it's his bow, he can't use it for shooting. Because when you use a bow for shooting, the curve faces the shooter. So that's the peace symbol in the rainbow. That's why it's called a rainbow. Okay, that's one thing to notice. Also, does this announcement require a change in the basic laws of nature? We're talking about a feature of the chemistry and the physics of water and light. The fundamental laws of the universe have to change in order that the rainbow should now appear in the cloud. How could you manage it that without changing the laws of nature?
Having it already been built in beforehand.
But then you would see the rainbow beforehand.
He just made it.
This is new, huh?
So he changed the laws of nature.
So I said, do you have to assume that he changed the fundamental laws of nature in order to allow now the rainbow to be visible when it wasn't before?
The version, either he made it before, so Noah it was a visible sign that he kind of like, okay, every time I see the rainbow, I know what is a rainbow. It's like, I know that God remembers. Or he changed the law of logic in order for Noah to see it.
There's another alternative. There's a third alternative. How could you arrange that no rainbow was seen until this time, and now it's going to be seen for the first time, without changing the laws of nature, laws of physics?
No rains.
Almost. And without rain, they'll all die of thirst, right? But try a little bit harder. Suppose it rains only at night. If it rains only at night, there'll be no rainbows. Because there'll be no clouds in the daytime. And in fact, the Malbim mentions that. And we have on record in the Talmud that there were certain generations in which it only rained at night. Because there was a blessing that shouldn't interfere with people's activity. So you don't have to. You don't have to do that. Okay. Now, last textual thing, and then we'll have to draw a philosophical conclusion. So, again, verses 12 through 16 are this elaborate description of the rainbow and its being in the cloud and the sign of the covenant and God will see it and so forth and so on. 17 says, God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I confirm between me and you, between all flesh upon the earth. What could 17 add to 12 through 16?
It was a proof.
Sorry?
It is a proof. I have confirmed. Not that I will.
What did he not, isn't that said in 12 to 16?
It's like Noah had to see it, and then God said, you see, I have confirmed.
What makes you think he saw it now?
Because God uses present tense.
This is the same.
Oh.
He didn't just say it, he did it.
Okay, so that's what they say, because it says this. The word this, both in Hebrew and in English, is a demonstrative. I can't say this book unless you can see it. I can't say this book which I have in my room. In English, I have to say that book which I have in my room. But this book has to be in front of us. I point to it, right? So you say 17 starts with the word, when he speaks, starts with the word this. This is the sign, right? But you see, the problem is that the very same words are in verse 12. Verse 12 already starts with this is the sign. So why would you say that in 17 he saw it and in 12 he didn't see it? If the word this is the demonstrative, it's got to be in front of you. Why didn't that happen in 12, leaving 17 with nothing to do?
Just because of what you taught us, that every time it says Vayomer Elohim, something new must have happened to make the...
Yeah, but you can't, how can you, right, that's true, that's got to be the conclusion, but the comment that you made, which by the way is correct, in 17, that he saw it, is based on the fact that this is a demonstrative. If that's the reason why, that's what it means, they have to tell me why in 12 it doesn't mean that.
It says confirm, that I've confirmed between me and all flesh. Why does he need to confirm anything?
I agree. Why does he need to confirm it? I agree that's correct. Just check and see. But I think that's an important question. I want to go back to my question and see if I can answer my question. 12 says this is the sign, and 17 says this is the sign. Commentators say that in 17, when it says this is the sign, it means he actually saw one. They do it on the basis of the fact that this has to point to something that's present. Why doesn't that apply to 12 also? And therefore he must have seen it in 12.
In 12, it doesn't say he's talking to Noah. When he said his heart again? Just said he said. What is he saying in his heart? And the second one he said to Noah.
Well, that's an interesting point, but usually, especially since you have 4 speeches, and 3 out of the 4 tell you that he's speaking to Noah, the normal assumption would be that this is another speech of the same kind. It's not something. It's not a soliloquy.
What about verse 13, where it says, "I have set my rainbow in the cloud"? That seems like it's present moment.
Okay.
God's like setting it in the cloud. I have set
Okay.
it. See,
Let me ask you. I want to point out that the word "this" has another use. It's always demonstrative for something that's present, but it has another type of use. Suppose you get an email. This is the recipe for the muffins. Take two cups of flour. Take a cup of milk. Mix them and so forth and so on. Well, it started off, this is the recipe. Where's the recipe?
What's coming?
What's coming in the text, right? The word "this" can refer to what's next in the text. It doesn't have to refer to something outside the text. The "this" in 12 is introducing a brand new idea. Doesn't appear anywhere in the text before this. This is the sign. You know what it is? What I'm going to tell you. What I'm just about to tell you. The rainbow. So in 12, the "this" refers to what's coming up in the text. That doesn't indicate that he saw it. 17 says he actually showed it to him. So look at the progression. When he tells them to leave the ark, he gives them a hint. Get together. They don't do it. After that, he gives them a blessing and an instruction to get together. They don't do it. After that, he tells them there's not going to be any more flood. I know that's what's worrying you. They don't do it. After that, he gives them a promise, a sign of the promise that there won't be any more flood, and they don't do it. Final step, he shows them one. Do they do it now? Take a look. What's verse 18? The sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Yafes. Ham being the father of Canaan. These are the sons of Noah. From these, the whole world was spread out. That's how the world got repopulated. So now they do it. There's a very subtle implication here. God can promise you something. God can tell you that he's established a sign of the promise. You may have no doubts. When he gives it to you experientially, then you can carry it out, or they do carry it out. Let me ask you a question. Let's suppose Noah had doubts, contrary to what I just said. Suppose Noah had doubts. God said there won't be any more floods, but gee, I don't know. I'm still worried. Right? Now God puts colors in the sky. Why would that encourage you? Oh, put the colors in the sky, for sure he's going to keep his promise. But why? So it's a sky show. So what? If you're worried that for some reason or other he's not going to keep the promise, without the sky show, it seems to me you ought to be just as worried if he does give you the sky show. What happens here is not giving another reason, not creating more probability, not giving more credibility. It's a very different matter. It's quite subtle and it's very important philosophically and Jewishly, in terms of Jewish philosophy. When you experience something, it has a different effect on you than when you hear about it, even from an authoritative source. I'll give you two examples of this, one from everyday life, or not everyday, but common life, and one from the text itself in a different place. I want you to imagine someone who's smoking and he's having trouble breathing. He goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, your left lung is shot. You're in danger of having it amputated entirely. And if you keep smoking, that'll damage your right lung. With no lungs, you can't breathe and you're going to die. Okay, he says that to him. Some people would be moved by that, would be shaken by that. Imagine, in addition to saying it to him, he shows him the x-ray. See this? This is your left lung. See all the black? That's the part of your lung that's shot. Do you expect that to have a bigger effect on him, seeing the x-ray? I think it will. For most people, it will. Not that he doubts the doctor. Gee, if I don't see the x-ray, maybe he's lying. Or maybe he was drinking when he read it and it wasn't true. I want to see it for myself. No, that's not what's going through your mind. What's going through your mind is, here's information and I'm processing it and I'm responding to it. Seeing it in a picture means to process in a different way. It has a different effect on you. I think that's the parallel here to the third speech where God tells him there'll be a sign, and the fourth where he shows him the sign. I didn't make this up. This is really a Ramban. And it's a Ramban on a passage which itself needs a lot of thought. Here, I'll show you the passage. Let's see if you can get the problem. This is where Moses is at the burning bush. Take a look at page 307. Now here again, I'm going to read it to you. Pretend you're an 11-year-old, you're reading this story, and the story has to make sense. Okay? There's a long dialogue between God and Moses at the burning bush. Our traditions say it took a week. Moses raised all sorts of objections to the challenge of going down to Egypt and being the agent for the Exodus. And God answered it one by one. Chapter 4, Moses' objection is this. Moses responded and said, but they will not believe me, they will not heed my voice, for they will say, Hashem did not appear to you. He's going to tell them, Hashem appeared to me, and he told me there's going to be an Exodus, and so on and so on. He says to God, they won't believe me. Okay? Hashem said to him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a staff. He said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground and became a snake. Moses fled from it. Hashem said to Moses, stretch out your hand and grasp its tail. He stretched out his hand and grasped its tail. It grasped it tightly and became a staff in his palm. So that they shall believe that Hashem the God of their forefathers, appeared to you, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. Hashem said further to him, bring your hand into your bosom. And he brought his hand into his bosom and withdrew it, and behold, his hand was leprous, like snow. He said, return your hand to your bosom. And he returned his hand to his bosom, and then he removed it from his bosom. And behold, reverted to be like his flesh. God speaks. It shall be that if they do not believe you and do not heed the voice of the first sign, they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall be that if they do not believe even these two signs and do not heed your voice, then you shall take from the water of the river and pour it out on the dry land, and the water that you shall take from the river will become blood when it is on the dry land. Now, I don't flatter myself that I myself got this, but there's something on the surface here that's really incoherent. There's something wrong with this story. Let me rehearse it for you again in summary and see if you can pick up where the logic goes wrong. Moses says, you want me to go down to Egypt? 4-week trip, 6-week trip. You want me to go down to Egypt and tell them that Hashem, the God of their fathers, creator of the universe, appeared to me and told me there's going to be an exodus and so on and so on. I don't believe it'll succeed. I don't think they'll believe me. They won't believe me that you appeared to me. They won't believe there's going to be an exodus. God says, okay, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to fix that. First of all, take your staff and throw it on the ground. And he does. It becomes a snake. That's pretty impressive. Now grab it, becomes a staff. So that they'll believe you when you say that God appeared to you. And if they don't believe that, put your hand in, it comes out leprous, put it back in, it comes out healthy. If they don't believe the first sign, they'll believe the second sign. And if they don't believe those two signs, then when you get there, take water from the Nile, pour it out on the ground, and it'll become blood. There's a problem here, and there's a solution. And there's something in the story which is extra, having nothing to do with the solution. Can you figure out what it is?
How does science making any sense, like for the goal?
Okay, what's the symbolism in the signs? What is it supposed to communicate? How's it connected to the goal? That's an interesting question, but it doesn't show that the story is incoherent. There's something in the story that's wrong, something in the story that doesn't make sense. You're saying that something be left out. I'm talking about something that's in there. Something that's in the story and doesn't make sense.
Why do they need multiple signs? Would one sign experience be enough?
Okay, first of all, that's an interesting question. That doesn't make it incoherent. It's just like overkill. It's just like why would you need 3? But there's another thing here. There's another discontinuity plus something that's totally extra. Again, let me try to hint it to you with a little more emphasis. Moses' problem is 6 weeks from now, I'm going to have a problem. Because 6 weeks from now, I'm going to be in Egypt. I'm going to tell them that you appeared to me. I'm going to tell them there's going to be an exodus. What's going to happen? How will they believe me? His problem is, what shall I do 6 weeks from now? What should be the response?
6 weeks from now, do these signs.
I can't hear you.
6 weeks from now, do these signs. Why do them now?
Right. Why do the signs now? Wwhy do them now?
Because
Tell him 6 weeks from now you'll throw your stick down and it'll become a snake. 6 weeks from now you'll put your hand in and pull your hand out and it will be leprous. Why is he doing it now? And the confirmation for the problem is what? What about the third sign? He doesn't do it now.
Where's the water?
There is no water. He says when you get there you'll take water from the Nile and you'll pour it out and it'll become blood. So what? The point is you have here 3 signs. None of them need to be done now. Hashem could have arranged for there to be water there, right? If he needed that. He knew what the questions he was going to ask. So the third one wasn't done. If the third one wasn't done, why do the first 2? So doing any of them is completely superfluous. And to do 2 out of 3 and not the third makes the problem a discontinuity in the story. This is a terrible problem. If you want stories to make sense, this doesn't make sense. And the Ramban points it out. And the Ramban says 2 things. First of all, he says something which Rashi brings, and he points out that this is in a way the motivation for, which is a rabbinic comment that Rashi is quoting. He says the first two. You asked what's the symbolism in these miracles. The first two, says Rashi, in the name of the rabbinic tradition, the first two are punishments for Moses. Because he said they won't believe. He's not expressing confidence in them. And he's sort of saying things, detracting things from them. And in the end, it turns out that, he's saying detracting things about them. The snake was the first one to speak Lashon Hara, to lie about what Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted, and to convince Chava to eat from the tree of knowledge. And leprosy is a punishment for Lashon Hara. So these two hint at Moses failing. And says the Ramban, what's motivating, what this comment does is to explain why the first two happen and the third doesn't. Because the first two are done to be a criticism of Moses. But the Ramban goes on to say that there's another explanation. And he says that Moses' heart will not be confident unless he sees the first two signs. And the reason why 2 out of the 3 were done in front of him is because the first 2 signs, seeing them, was enough to make his heart confident. I think that's a gigantically important principle. Talking about Moses, the greatest of all prophets ever, the one who's called Eved Hashem twice, God's servant, the humblest of all men. His heart won't be confident. Not that he'll doubt. It's not that, what's the probability of it's coming true? 100%. I have no doubts. But there's a difference between having doubts and being confident. Your emotions don't always respond to what your mind knows. Elef Havdalah's David Hume has a beautiful example. Take a cage, a metal cage, let's say with holes that are a foot by a foot, and a lattice of metal. 6-sided cage. Put a person in it and lift them off the floor. Shake the cage. It's metal, it's iron, it's strong. Now suspend the cage over the Grand Canyon. Is his experience going to change a little bit? Is his heart rate going to go up? Will he be perspiring? It's a long way down. It's the same cage, it's just as strong as it was on over the land. Yeah, but it's a long way down. What you know doesn't control your emotions always. Not even when the creator of the universe speaks to Moses does what you know control your emotions. So therefore, Kodesh Baruch Hu did the first 2 to strengthen his heart. Now I think that's the same thing that's going on over here with Noah. God promises him that there's not going to be another flood, and God tells him there's going to be a sign of it. Yeah, okay, he's being told this. He's absorbing information. Very good. But when he sees it, then he does it. Because seeing it speaks to another level of the human personality that just speaking doesn't speaking with words doesn't approach. So you see this twice, and I'll show you in a moment a third example where it happens in the Torah. This becomes now an extremely important principle. 2 places where it's important is number 1 in education, especially when you educate children. But when you educate elders as well, it's not enough to talk. Experience is very important. Even if the experience doesn't add any information to what you said, but the fact of experiencing it gives it an access to the personality that the rest doesn't have. And not only is this a matter of education in general, but if you think about various mitzvos that we have, some of the mitzvos are designed to be experiential. Once you know that the Torah has this as a principle, that experience is an important element in orienting a person, you can then understand certain mitzvos in this way. I'll just give you one example. You know that there were 3 pilgrimage festivals in the Jewish calendar, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, where the mitzvah was to go up to the temple in Jerusalem. That was a mass experience. You're standing there with at least hundreds of thousands of other Jews. Well, we have a principle about that. Berov Am Hadras Melech. In the multitude of the people is the glory of the king. And to experience the glory of the king from time to time is very good. It's very important. And that's one of the reasons why there are 3 pilgrimage festivals. And you have to take this seriously because in those days you didn't get an Eger bus and get there in 6 hours. Could be a week's travel each way. That's 6 weeks on the road per year. If you're a farmer, that's a lot of time on the road. Indeed, I once was giving a shiur in Chicago, downtown, and I came down from the 80th story, and I was waiting on the street for my ride to pick me up. A Jew appeared out of nowhere, total stranger, came over to me, total stranger, and he said, in the times of the temple, where do you think people spent Yom Kippur? I said, what? Who are you? Like, what are you talking about? Where did they spend Yom Kippur? I guess in shul, I mean, they were davening and fasting and so on. No, he said, they spent it on the road. Because if you're going from Tveria to Yerushalayim, you can't get there in 2 days. Shabbos could be in between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. You'd have only 2 days to get there. You won't make it. No, you were on the road. You were in a field someplace with strangers, and you put together a minyan to daven. And then he walked away. One of the strangest experiences I've ever had in my whole lifetime. He didn't identify who he was and why he was talking to me and why he told me this of all things. But what a revelation it was to me. Look at the sacrifice you're talking about. You're not sitting in the shul, the air-conditioned shul with your stender with the lock, it's locked up, and you have your spices to smell so that you feel, no, you're on the road on the way to Yerushalayim. So this is the idea of Berov Am Hadras Melech, the gathering together of the Jewish people creates an experience which is crucial to your Jewish identity. Do we have anything like that in our times? Well, there are certain mass experiences when you'll go in Shavuos to daven at the Kotel, and there'll be 100,000 people there, and you have people from all over the world, all different kinds of pronunciations, different kinds of customs. It's a fabulous experience. There is one, however, that's also every 7.5 years. There's the finishing of the Daf Yomi. The Daf Yomi is the daily folio of the Talmud. Folio means 2 pages, both sides. And if you do it a folio a day, every 7.5 years you finish it. And there are gatherings of people all over the world to celebrate together. At the last one, which was 3.5 years ago, at Giant Stadium, there were 95,000 Jews. All together to celebrate that. You don't forget that. 95,000 Jews saying Yehei Shmei Rabbah and Baruch Hu together, davening silently. When was Giant Stadium ever silent? Ever. When it's filled with 95,000 people. Never. You do that, you'll never forget it. Never forget it. So even if you're not learning the Daf Yomi, which I suppose at this stage in your development you're not, you should think about participating in it. It's a gigantic. So now, this is the principle here, that experience has an effect on the way in which the matter is absorbed into the personality, and it's important even for someone like Moses. Now I'm going to show you that it's even important for even someone like Abraham, and then I will have finished this. Look on page 67. Here too, see if you can pick up the key question. So the background, I'll start at the top of the page, but the background, what I want to get to is halfway down. After these words, after these events, the word of Hashem came to Avram in a vision, saying, "Fear not, Avram, I'm a shield for you, your reward is very great." Avram said, "My Lord Hashem, what can you give me, seeing that I am childless?" 3, Avram says again, "See, you've given me no offspring." So twice he says, "I'm childless." 4, suddenly the word of Hashem came to him saying, "That one," he's referring to his steward, that one will not inherit thee. Only he, I think it should be, that shall come forth from within you shall inherit you. So you say you have no children, I'm telling you, you will have children. And he, God, took him, Abraham, outside and said, gaze now toward the heavens and count the stars, if you're able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your offspring be. And he, Abraham, trusted in Hashem. What question do you want to ask here?
Well, he didn't trust.
Sounds like he didn't trust, one thing, but also, if he didn't trust, then
How does showing him the night sky do anything?
how is showing him the stars do anything, And he knew what the stars looked like. Why show him them to him now? Say to Abraham, remember what they looked like last night? So they'll be. Don't say remember, just say the stars the children will be like the stars. More than that, look more carefully. It says, he took him outside and said to him, it says, gaze now toward the heavens and count the stars if you're able to count them. And he said to him, what happened in between? He's counting. He's counting. God told him to count, so he's counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you see, it gets difficult because after a while, you don't know which ones you've counted already. It's hard to check them off. Have you ever seen the Milky Way? Imagine being told to count the stars in the Milky Way. It's going to be difficult. But God puts him through this exercise. Count! I told you to count. Count! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just like you can't count the stars. Why not simply say it was like, you know what the stars are, it'll be like the stars. Because he's putting him through an experience. It isn't that Abraham had doubts. Yeah, I know he told me I should, but maybe not. Who knows? Things happen and things change. No. It's that although he has no doubts intellectually, but his heart isn't strong in the confidence. Like Ramban says about Moses, his heart was not strong. So he put him through this experience to strengthen his heart. So you see this is a fundamental Jewish principle. And that's what's going on with Noah when he shows him the sign, which results in immediately he and his children carrying it out. Yeah.
Any practical advice, applications for we daven every day, we learn every day, we're connected to Hashem in a very, in our brain and heart way. And
Well, one is, I think, just the one that I said before, that's very dramatic when you talk about the Siyam HaShas. But for example, when there is a great celebration, or when there is a great gathering of Jews, when someone great dies. We've had cases of funerals here where 250,000 people came out. You go and you walk and you see wherever you look, you see black. Up, down the street, the side streets, the rooftops, the porches, everything is black with people. I remember when Moshe Feinstein, Zechariah the Baruch, was nifter in America, and he arrives, his box, his Aron, arrived here on Purim for Yerushalayim, the 15th of Adar. I thought, how well known was he? When you talked in Torah circles, unless you talk specifically about matters of practical law, which he had written on, you did not hear his name very often. In yeshivas or in gatherings, you didn't hear his name very often. 250,000 people came out on Purim. On Purim. I, as an American, I couldn't believe it. I saw it. I was there. I walked with him. So when you see that, you get a sense of there being a giant world out there. Ohr Somayach is wonderful. We have our few hundred students, and we work together and so on and so on, but it's a very big world out there. And it gives you a different impression as to what you're linking up to, what its significance is. I think it's definitely worthwhile.
is there individual application? With that in a big group, you yourself and I, go out and hug a tree and feel
For example, if you have the opportunity to observe shiurim of great people. There are a lot of recorded shurim. To hear, not just read what's written. There's a pasuk, "V'hoyo einecha ro'as es morecha." Your eyes shall see your teacher, singular, even though it's pronounced morecha. And the Navi, the prophet, is talking about when the Mashiach comes, Kodesh Baruch Hu's presence will be visible. Morecha here means Kodesh Baruch Hu. You'll be able to see, right? Receiving information in a face-to-face encounter is very different from receiving it, let's say, in an email or in a book. So we have today the resources whereby you can actually observe the presentation and you can be affected by the presentation. So I think that itself is experiential. But it's more when you go to, let's say, a big gathering and there's someone great who's speaking, and that person is, you're surrounded by an audience of people who are grappling with it. It's even more so. Yeah.
Maybe like a little cheating comment. He says count, if you're able to count them, and he starts counting. Why would he even think he's able to count them?
I think he's indicating to him that that's the point of the exercise, to see that you can't count them. Otherwise, you could make up all sorts of points. The ones he counted will be special, and the ones he didn't count won't be special. There could be all sorts of reasons why you could imagine his asking him to do this. But he's telling him, I want you to perform this exercise so you see that you're not able to
I don't
count.
know why Hashem would say, why, but he's saying, if you think that you could count them, then count them. So he starts counting them. Why would Abraham think he could even count them? There's so many, why would he think he could, you just said, I can't count them.
Okay, so this is a deep question. It's a very important question. The Torah says in Dvarim, because Baruch Hu says to the Jewish people, Lo v'shamayim, the Torah is not in heaven, that you should say, who will go to heaven for us to bring it down? And it's not over the sea that you should say, who should go over the sea to bring it to us? Says Rashi, because if it were in heaven, you'd have to go up and get it. And if we're over the sea, you'd have to go over the sea to get it. To which the Sfas Emes says, what do you mean I'd have to go up to heaven to get it? I can't go up to heaven to get it. Sfas Emes says, because Baruch Hu tells you something has to be done, he'll make it possible to be done. He doesn't have limitations. Moses is on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. He doesn't eat, and he doesn't drink, and he doesn't sleep, which people aren't all aware of, but it's an explicit verse where he says, I was praying day and night in the middle 40-day period. So, you can't do that? Yeah, you can do that. If Kodesh Baruch Hu wants it to be done, it can be done. So if Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted it to be done, that Abraham should count the stars, he would make it possible for him to do it. Yeah? Okay. Fine.